How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.
My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts. Technical issues. But they're solved now. And this is The Experts on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I just got off from an hour and 15-minute long phone call with the one and only Ron Bellin. If you're wondering where I was, hey, when the Master Chief calls, I got to do what the Master Chief says. So we were talking and talking about the world problems, which was a good setup for this. And actually, one of the things that we talked about over the past hour and a half, that's kind of the good thing about having your own show. I know people were chomping at the bit to get this started, but you know, talking to Ron brought up some good points about why we're failing in leadership in this country. And so I figured we'll talk about that a little bit, and we'll go through the headlines. Don't forget to share this show. Don't forget to retweet it. And I guess we'll get started. Hoo-yah, CQRF. Let's do it. So I was just about to share this show right now as we're talking. So make sure that you're sharing it on Facebook. You know, you copy the link and then share it on your other pages or with friends, or just share it on your page. Let me see here. I got a couple different pages on here for work and stuff. Let's see. There you go. Today was my first visit with a physical therapist for my leg. And it was interesting because the leg is now able to bend at 90 degrees, but until next week, I don't get cleared to go past 90 degrees. But for those of you that have had knee injuries before, or any injury for that matter, it was very interesting because they, when they tested the knee, so they'll take the knee and they do different things, like they measure it with the good leg and then they measure it with the bad one. So they want to they'll take your leg and they'll hold it here and they'll see how much strength you have to pull down. Then they'll try that with the other one. And then they'll do the same thing where they'll hold your foot here and they press up just to see how much strength you have in the other one. Well, when he was holding he did it with my strong leg. He held the ankle. I pressed up, He held onto the right ankle where my bad knee is. And I hadn't put any weight on this knee from at that extreme since I had it operated on. And when it pressed up, man, there's scar tissue inside that knee. Just goes. If you've ever had an injury where you have scar tissue build up when you go to physical therapy and that stuff lets loose, it's a scary thing because it's not like a regular crack or pop that you get in your joints. It's more of a tear. And it was like we both just stopped because you could hear it, and it would like that. And I stopped and I was like, oh crap, please tell me I didn't just, tear the replay or the where they sewed that stuff together. Please tell me I didn't just do that. But no, it's moving fine. So anyway, that's what I did today. And then I've been watching the news and watching what's going on. I took Rico for a nice long walk. Today's been not too much of a hectic day, but I needed a day. Today was kind of like, I think, the beginning of the full recovery from the flu. So I'm really feeling a lot better. My voice is getting better. And I was going to have some beer tonight for the toast, but I think it's too soon. Got my Singer spray here. I don't want to take the chance on, I don't know. Sometimes after you have a couple drinks and you haven't drinking in a while, it hits you pretty hard. So, yes, Singer spray. That's right. Thank you, Mo. And so let's talk about some stuff here. Let's go through the headlines real quick about the stuff that I have here in the title. I'm watching my dog over there. It looks like he might be stuck. I may have to go get him here in a second. He's been having problems with his hips today. He's an old man. Why don't you just lay down there and relax? He looks pitiful. So I'll go get him here in a minute. So if we look at the title of the show, the Democrats' memo is shot down. I think people are smart enough to know. I think that this kind of backfired on the Democrats. They put out a memo. I'm really interested to see what it says because the president denied it because there's trade craft secrets in this. You knew they were going to do this. Look, Adam Schiff is a liar. Nancy Pelosi is a liar. Look, if you're liberal and you're watching this, Paul Ryan is a liar. John McCain is a liar. I don't have any problems calling people liars that are liars. And these people are nefarious. But let's be honest. Come on. If you're a Democrat and you look at Congressman Schiff, come on. That guy is the biggest BS artist. Nancy Pelosi is out there and freaking, she's a communist and left. I remember interviewing David Horowitz, who was a communist when he was younger and then saw the light later on in his life. I remember interviewing him on Sean Hannity's radio show once and listening to him, and I asked him point blank, are these people, do they grow into this weird ideological belief that the left has, or are they cultivated? He goes, oh no, these people are cultivated. He said Nancy Pelosi is a communist, and Nancy Pelosi was cultivated to be a communist. And I mean, it was pretty surprising to hear this come from somebody who, was David Horowitz wasn't just like one of these idiots who goes around, from the freaking Antifa people who, they're a communist on the weekend. But David Horowitz was a real life communist, and he saw the light. So to hear him say that about Nancy Pelosi is a pretty big deal. Anyway. These people don't care about tradecraft secrets. That's why they release information all the time. Dianne Feinstein is one of the worst about this. Whereas if the Republicans do it, they call it leaking. But if the Democrats do it, they call it they felt the need that they needed to release the information. Dianne Feinstein does that all the time. These people don't care about tradecraft secrets. They don't. So of course, they're going to craft their memo where it either had to be denied or heavily redacted. And that's what's happened. So now this got kicked back by the president, and rightfully so. I can only imagine what's in there. And by the way, why do we need a Democrat's memo anyway? The House Intelligence Committee should have, I believe when they released the memo that they did, the Nunez's memo, they should have offered it up publicly, which they probably did to the Democrats. The Democrats probably said, no, we don't, we're not going to do that. We're going to do our own. Here's what I don't get, folks. And I say that kind of with, as a joke, because I get it. These people are not there to govern. They're not there to do what's effective. Otherwise, they would be sitting down and saying, there is something totally screwed up in the DOJ, totally screwed up in the FBI, totally screwed up in all these agencies, and we've got to do something to figure out, to fix this, and particularly when it comes to people in the FBI and the DOJ maneuvering to fix an election, which is what's happened with, we don't have to get into that whole story. If you don't know what's going on there, well, I'll do another show on it, but, with the dossier and with the deputy directors from the FBI and Mueller and Comey and the DOJ and Rod Rosenstein and Christopher Wray and all these people and all these things in the Democratic Party and all this stuff that's going on up there in Washington, D.C. with Steele and Fusion GPS. And the Intelligence Committee, instead of coming together and saying, we've got a problem, we've got a real problem with potential spies, with potential treason, with potential espionage, obstruction of justice. No, they don't look at it and say, as a collective group, which we've hired, I don't care if you're liberal or conservative, you've hired these people to go to Washington, D.C., to do what's effective, to govern this country. It doesn't mean to govern, in other words, that they're up there on a pedestal like kings and queens where we got to kiss a signet ring and they tell us, you peasants will pay more taxes. That's not what we send them there to. We send them there to make sure that national security is taken care of, that things like public roads are taken care of, to make sure that there's a whole host of things that on the simplified level, what the government's actually is supposed to be there for. This is one of them. The House Intelligence Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, these people are sent there to ensure that our intelligence, our national security is not being hampered. The Intelligence Committee isn't up there to collect intelligence, to run operations, or to make judgment calls on people who don't follow their ideology. They're up there to make sure that these intelligence committees, the FBI, these different groups, that they're in line with what they're supposed to be doing, that they're following the laws the way that they're supposed to be doing. In a large part, they're there to figure out how much they should be funded because Congress holds the power of the purse. And then also, when things like this happen, they're there to investigate it and make recommendations with the President of the United States on what should be done. And that is not happening. There's no need for multiple memos. that we hire them to sit there in that committee and work it out. And that is absolutely not being done, as we can see time and time again. I swore to an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, as did many of you watching this show tonight. And I have to ask the question. I've never asked this question before, mainly in part because I don't want people spinning it out of control. But I'm going to ask the question because I want you to think about it. At what point do we reach that level that the Founding Fathers talked about, where we have to pick up arms and go against the government? At what point do people in the military and in law enforcement turn around and say, our government's broken, we got to take it over? Because as of what I'm seeing now, what we've been seeing over the past 2 years really is that, as I've talked about before, and I said on Breitbart earlier this week, the whole system of how they recruit people is broken. All right, they recruit people through tests that are based in liberal ideology. And liberals, you may be out there saying, well, that's okay, because they need to think of, no, it's not okay. There needs to be no ideology except for, if you're applying for the FBI, do you know how to investigate? Do you know how to run a case? Can you be taught? Can you be trained? Can you be trusted? Kind of like in the military. Your job is not to show up to the FBI's door with an ideological bag on your shoulder saying, oh, yeah, I know that trick. I got it right here in my bag. I'm going to pull this out. That is not your job. That is not the job of the FBI or the CIA or the State Department or any of these groups. You should be hired on whether or not you're qualified to do the job. But what has happened is that the lower levels have been tainted. The people have been chosen based on ideologies, right? That's a problem. That needs to be fixed. The other problem is that people are risen in rank based on their ability to climb a ladder, not their ability to operate. Now, let me say that again. People are being promoted in all of these agencies because they know how to climb the ladder. They know to check this box. They know to kiss that ass. They know to not say that in that place and to absolutely say this in that place. And they go bing, bang, boom, and they're up at the top. And a lot of these people, especially when it comes to political appointees, they don't do any of that climbing. They go to Harvard, and next thing you know, they're either a senator, a congressman, or a high-level political appointee, and that's a problem. So we've seen throughout the past couple of years the culmination of this, and so what we see now is that we have a government. It's not quite gotten to the point where, like it was when some of these countries turned communist and the governments take over completely. What we have is a government full of people who are all maneuvering to push their ideology or their party forward. I literally have not been coughing until I just started this show. So before it gets to the point where the politicians are ordering tanks to go here and set up there, ordering federal agents to go and break down doors, ordering the military to pick up martial law. I'm not a conspiracy theorist as far as this stuff goes. But I am going to tell you this. There's not many more steps that we are going to take before we get to that point. So my question is this. And all the little Facebook and Twitter employee trolls that are screwing with this freaking show, I hope you're listening to this, because what's going to happen if we get to a point where it's too late and the people can't react, and we've stacked the ranks in the military with people who are more concerned with whether or not a transgender gets to serve more than they do whether or not we have an effective fighting force, or we have FBI agents that will stand up and praise a director who is a criminal because they hate Trump. You know, if we keep going down that road, regardless of your ideology, you do not want FBI agents that are choosing to do things based on liberal or conservative. They should be choosing to do things based on the law. And the military should be, listen, the military swears the same oath as law enforcement to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Who do you think the domestic enemies are that we need to be watching out for in this country? Do you think it's ISIS? Do you think it's Al-Qaeda? Do you think it's white supremacists? No. Do those people exist? Yes. Do they have strength in numbers enough to do anything in this country? No. And that's, you know, a lot of people think, well, I got my Second Amendment, I got my guns, ain't nothing going to happen to me. I'm going to listen, yeah, you may be able to fight it out with 5 ISIS fighters or a couple white supremacists who are doing something stupid. But I'll tell you who you're not going to fight it out with. You're not going to fight it out with the federal government that's ran by the Democratic and Republican national committees because they own the government. And so my question is, at what point, again, if you're a liberal watching this show or controlling it because you're working at Facebook and you're killing my reach, which you have, we all know it, there's no secret here. I'm calling you out, I'll call you out over and over again. The reach has died, the numbers have died, but somehow the amount of people that I see on here on a daily basis never changed. It's just gotten bigger and bigger. Same thing on Twitter. Today I go on Twitter, I freaking tweet a picture with me, Sean Hannity, and Dan Bongino saying I'm going to be on their show. And on Twitter, it goes to the tweets and replies, which means it doesn't get sent out over my news feed, which means people aren't going to see it. So maybe 1 or 2 people will see it, and I'll get like 1 or 2 retweets. But if I retweet it, or if I change it a little and it stays on my tweets column, then it goes to the news feed, and I'll get 100 retweets. See that they're playing with these games, and I'm telling you, if you're one of these punks that's doing that, you need to listen to this very carefully. You may think this is funny, all fun and games. You may think you're a hero or whatever. I'm telling you right now, if this country ever goes the way that the leftists want it to go, you will have no freedom. You will have no food. You will have your little college that you're going to go to. That's going to stop, because I can guarantee you the majority of you people that are doing this are, and I'm talking to liberals and even people in Texas and everywhere else that have on the right wing that say they got their guns, they're not going to be messed with. That's bullcrap. Because if you don't stand up against what's happening right now in Washington, D.C., here's what's going to happen. There's going to be normalization eventually. They're going to have some reason to deploy troops somewhere. They're going to have some reason to crack down on something somewhere. And it's going to get to a boiling point where somebody has to say, bring out the troops. And what happens then? Your freedom stops. You are, in essence, enslaved. You become a prisoner in your own country. You're not going to be going to college. If you're a trouble maker like I am because you're outspoken and you've seen certain things certain ways, my good buddy Drago will tell you what happens then. You go to a camp that is not considered a concentration camp. What they call them, I'm trying to think of the word here, is where they reprogram you so that you think like they do, right? Which doesn't really work, but it's another reason just to get you out of there. And they'll stick you in a prison. If you're gay and you're an activist, you're probably going to be killed. If you're a black activist, you'll probably be killed. If you're any type of an activist that they utilize to divide the country, once they normalize, which is normalization is when they bring the tanks in, you're the first people that they kill. Now, you need to take a serious look at that, because, and that's not what I started to talk about tonight, but I keep reflecting back on this over and over, that while all this stuff is happening and the American citizenry is getting a perfect picture of the way that these nefarious people on the left and the right, the Republicans and the Democrats, conservatives and liberals, whatever you want to label them as up top. And Rand Paul said this perfectly last night. He said that the Republicans, when the Democrats are in power, the Republicans are conservative. But when the Republicans are in power, they become liberal, and there, in its essence, is no conservative party in Washington, D.C. And that's why we're suffering right now. So the American people, liberal and conservative, you're being given pearls of wisdom on a daily basis by looking at the headlines, about the Dems memo. They're utilizing our national security secrets so that they can further their ideology, not because they're so worried about injustices being done that they felt it was worth risking our national security. That's not why they're doing it. They're playing a game with your national security. They play games with our budgets. So they just passed this budget. And I was on 3 shows today, and all of them asked about budgets. I don't know anything about budgets, all right? I'm not an economist. But what I can tell you is I don't trust these people to sign a bill, let alone craft a bill, especially a budget bill, because we're talking about trillions of dollars. And you think it's difficult to reappropriate or misappropriate $1 billion here, $1 billion there? Like you and I, if I gave you $1 billion, or hopefully if you ever gave me $1 billion, I wouldn't have to work for the rest of my life. I would die with money. But the government, and so it seems like a lot of money to us, but the government will take $1 billion and they'll maneuver it around to the point where sometimes money's coming back into their pockets and you don't even know, let alone that there's not anything that's going to happen to them. So what I'm getting at here is when we see things like this memo getting shot down, when we see this whole process of what's been going on, of why there's even these memos, we are being given pearls of wisdom to see the reality of what's happening in Washington, D.C. So I ask the question of the American people. I'm asking you this question. You tell me, at what point do you do what the Founding Fathers said you may have to do, which is pick up arms against your government in order to keep it from turning into a tyrannical government? I'd like to ask historians. I'd like to ask different constitutionalist experts on this. At what point does the American people stop listening to the press and the media to get their truth and the reality of what's going on in Washington, D.C.? When it reminds me, I grew up in a small town, and gossip goes around like that. And you can hear something that happens, and it's going to go around the town in no time flat. You'll get bits and pieces, and pretty much if you grew up in that town, you know who these people are, then you can kind of put a picture together of what's happening. Well, it's the same thing with Washington, D.C. You grew up in America, you watch TV, you see the news, you get enough of reality of what's happening in Washington, D.C. that when this stuff starts to really pop out, Americans can sit back and say something is messed up. I mean, this is just more than just politics. This is bad. And so I think that I think that you see it. I don't care if you're a veteran or you're a cop or if you're a civilian or a mom or whatever. If you're poor or rich, liberal or conservative, man or woman, gay, straight, black, white, I don't care any of it. You have the ability to see reality, enough reality to where you can say something is, this is something, right? There's too much of this to say that it's just Trump. There's too much of this to say that it's just the conservatives making it up. There's real stuff going on here. And so I posed the question to the American public, to those historians that are out there, to the constitutional experts. At what point do the citizens in this country stand up with arms, hopefully with the military, don't know about that, hopefully with law enforcement, don't know about that? At what point do sheriffs and chiefs of police and lieutenants in the military and captains in the military and E5s in the military and E4s in the military, these operations officers in the CIA, special agents in the FBI, at what point do we sit back and say, we've lost control of this country? The people have lost control of this country. At what point do we all say together in a collective, yeah, we got to do something about this? And we run the people in Washington, D.C. that are running things the hell out of Washington, D.C. At what point does that happen? I'm asking you. Because in order to oust those people in Washington, D.C., and not just get rid of them, but shut them up. And I'm not talking about killing anybody in Washington, D.C. I'm talking about hopefully one day they would be able to go to a trial. But see, the only way that would ever happen, and I'm not condoning it, and I'm not saying that it's a bad idea, the American people, including those in official service in all of the agencies, including those in the military, those in law enforcement, at what point do we stand together with the tools and the weapons that you have at your disposal and say, no more? Washington, D.C., literally, with the exception of the civilians that are in the State of the Union address, every single one of those people, including the one guy that gets, or man or woman that gets taken out in case something happens, at what point do we stand up as a people and go towards those individuals and say, no more, you're fired, you're going to be tried, your actions are going to be judged by a jury of the American people? Because I'm looking at this stuff every day. I'm looking at it. Here's an incredible story. Listen to this. Let me pull this up here. The fate of Trump's border wall could rest in part with the judge who he once clashed with. This is the judge that is, I think he's in San Diego. So the president's plan to, this is off of FoxNews.com, the president's plan to build a wall along the southern border could come crumbling down before the structure is even built, thanks to a lawsuit filed by the state of California being argued Friday in San Diego. Now here's a linchpin to this. It's going to be heard by federal judge Gonzalo Curiel. That's the judge that President Trump criticized during the 2016 campaign over his Mexican heritage and the fact that he belongs to a not even left wing, a leftist group in California called, they are called, one second here. Where is he? These stories are going all over the place. Anyway, he belongs to, if you know the name of that group, let me know. I forgot what the name of that group is. Anybody know? The name of the leftist group, oh, La Raza. Thank you very much. I think that was Remo. Yeah, he belongs to La Raza, which is a leftist group. And they can say whatever they want, but they're a leftist group. And they believe there should be no borders. They believe that immigrants should be taken care of more than American citizens. I mean, they're definitely a leftist group with hope and aspirations to better illegal immigrants in this country than they do actual citizens of this country. Yeah, La Raza, otherwise known as the race. Thank you very much, Loretta. So this is the problem that we have in this country. You can't even look at judges who by definition are supposed to be neutral. And so I ask the question again to the judges that are out there. At what point are you going to get it? And if it happens, if it starts, are you going to take a stand and say, I'm standing with the American citizens? Or are you going to go and pull the old, you're going to start arresting people because there's going to be cops, there's going to be federal agents. It's going to be what happened up in Oregon times 10,000. And it doesn't matter. Listen, I criticize what happened in Oregon with the Bundys, not because I didn't think they were in their rights to do what they did. I just think they did it wrong. You don't show up with weapons and children. You're going to cause a problem there. They should have shown up and occupied that space without any weapons. They should have gotten arrested like the left does, made their case in court, and if Trump had come in office by this point, they might have actually been moving forward, and what's his name would still be alive. Forgive me for forgetting his name right now. My brain's all over the place. So, anyway, what am I trying to say here again and again is that there's going to be a point, and this is why it'll never get started out. This is why things will have to hit a freaking, no, not Scalia. He'd probably still be alive too if it wasn't for the leftists in this country. But there's always going to be a point whenever a revolution, Finicum Lavoie, thank you for that, let me remember his name. Lavoie would probably still be alive if that had been done correctly. And I think that what they did was gallant. I think they did it for the right reasons, but I think they went about it wrong. And the main thing was they showed up with guns. You don't really have to show up with guns when you're going to protest. And then they showed up with guns as though they were going to win that fight when there's no way they're going to win it. And then they brought kids in there, and that's not good at all. That is a recipe for disaster. Anyway, the point being is that what happened there is going to happen to people. If you stand up to the government, there's going to be people getting arrested. If you show up with guns, there's going to be people get killed. But at what point, that's what I'm asking. I'm not instigating anything. I'm not advocating anything. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm asking you the question. How far down the criminal road does the government and those people, now I say the government, I'm talking about the upper echelons of the federal government, the deputy directors, the senior executive service people, the political appointees, and the politicians, the judges. How much are we going to allow them to get away with before the people stand together and say no more? Before you have to pick up arms and you have to take the government back? Are you willing to stand and get arrested and potentially, to see, here's the problem. I learned this lesson in the military. Never volunteer in the military, because you know what's going to happen? Everybody's like, yes, we're going to do this. And when they say volunteers, you go like this, you turn around, nobody else volunteers. And then you get shoved out there, and then you get the freaking crap sandwich. We don't have backbone in this country. Only 1% of us. I'm not saying if you're a civilian, never served, that you don't have backbone. Our citizenry doesn't have backbone. You take people who volunteer to stand together, and those people will do what they're told. They'll do what needs to be done. But when you take the collective citizenry of this country that is so submerged in the cancer of comfort, and you think that they're going to stand up and say, we are going to take this country back. They'll say that, but they're not going to do it. And then you're going to end up like Finicum, like Lavoie. You're going to end up dead, and everybody else is alive. So, I think it's time to start asking this question. And I think it's time that the American people start asking this question together. Because if you don't contemplate this question, what's going to happen is they see it. They see it on social media. They're getting, social media is interesting now because they literally can measure the collective thought of the population now. If the population starts grumbling because they see what's going on and they're ready to stand together left and right, they're going to see that. We're going to see their response. But I think it's time that American people start having this collective discussion. And for those of you that have been watching the show for 2 years that I've been doing this, and you've heard me for 4.5 years, almost 5 years, on all the different networks doing analysis, you know that I don't pull punches, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't try to tackle people because they may be liberal. I go after people who are liars. I go after people who are trying to misinform the American public. I go after the truth. I push the truth forward, and the truth is my sword. So when I'm asking this question, I'm asking you all, are you considering this? I'm not trying to say it so I get more people watching. I'm not asking these questions so that people say, "Good grief, did you hear what that guy said?" And then get on the news and stuff. I'm asking you this question because there's plenty of evidence now. As I said on Sean Hannity's show today, as I said in Breitbart earlier this week, there is more than enough evidence now to show that there are the two political parties in this country, the Republican and the Democratic parties, the establishment parties. I'm not talking about the people that are having their Abe Lincoln dinners, which I have not been asked to speak at one of those yet this year. Hint, hint. I'm talking about the establishment parties in Washington, D.C., and the ones that own, the state level people. We're seeing what's happening in the way that they control and the nefarious things that are going on. How much further do we let that go? And the more of you start asking that question, the more you start talking about it, the more of you will be willing to stand up together. And Michelle Kelly says, you can't believe what the government has been putting our ranchers through. You must get more familiar with them, JTG. Listen, I know exactly what they're putting you through. And I'm not downplaying what you're going through. In fact, what you're going through is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. See, you can see it overtly. The ranchers see it overtly. And that's because they have land that is being taken. They have pressures, regulations. Same thing in the trucking industry. The trucking industry has been regulated so that big corporations get bigger and owner-operators go away. So that big corporations that can survive off of pennies per mile and still make billions of dollars, whereas the smaller trucking companies, they'll just go away because they can't afford it. I understand what's going on with the ranchers. It's the same manipulative process of getting you out of there for various reasons. A lot of the reasons I don't fully understand, and I don't know if anybody fully understands the nefarious leftist reasons for wanting the land. I know there's several reasons for it. Maybe mining and minerals in certain places, and they want that land so they can get access to it and then do like they did with the Uranium One, sell it to the Russians. I get it. But here's what I'm saying is that what you're seeing overtly, we're also seeing overtly in Washington, D.C. now. Whereas these games used to be very covert. I think what, Lavoie's death and what the Bundys did, one thing that they did right was that they brought light to those overt activities. The election in 2016 brought light because the media is so corrupt and so twisted and so blatantly lost that they don't even realize that they're doing the same thing. They are showing us overtly what they're doing, what's going on in Washington, D.C., and the American people have started to see this. So just like the ranchers took action up there, I'm asking the American people, when do you think it's going to be time to take action against the government? And if that action is ever decided to be taken, how are you going to be unified? How are you, the citizenry, going to be unified with the fringe elements of the military who have seen this and said no more? Who is going to unify those fringe elements The cops, some of the judges, some of the politicians say, I don't want any part of a political party anymore. I want to be an effective leader, and I don't want any of this anymore. And I'm not talking about Tea Party type stuff where all you're doing is getting politicians that are establishment jumping on board so they can make their name and stay relevant. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about getting rid of political parties, dismantling the system, redoing the way that people are promoted in government, getting rid of those people that are at the top right now. You may have done a great and prestigious job, but your time is over. It's been, if you are a upright and righteous servant to the country, and you're an admiral, a general, or you are a deputy director, you're a senior executive service member, and you've never played in these games, hey, I salute you, but your time is over. And this needs to change. You need to go back to being an agent or, a line officer in the military, or get out if I had my way. Because we can't, it's broken. People don't get promoted because they're good. They get promoted because they know how to climb. And those people are weeded out so that only like-minded people are at the top, not effective. It's not like you're reaching down and saying that person is an incredible warrior. Let's bring them up here. No, they don't want those types up there. They want to look around and say, okay, these people are climbing up. I can see it in the eyes. That person will do exactly what we do. They know how to scratch backs. They know how to keep their mouth shut. They know how to promote each other upwards. Let's bring that person up. You see, that system needs to be done away with. Senior executive service, as we know it, needs to be done away with. Political appointees, done away with. Political appointees serve no purpose except for a political purpose. That is it. In the history of the United States, this is what's funny about this. In the history of the United States, I know of no time when a federal agency has run rogue. And we haven't always had political appointees. We didn't have a Secretary of Defense until 1947, and we won every war before that, and we've never won a war after. Because political appointees are peddlers of politics. They are not subject matter experts in that field, and they are not leaders of those agencies. They are people that are put in place so they can manipulate those agencies for their political party. That is why they're there. And that is not why those agencies exist. That's not why the State Department, the DOD, the FBI, the CIA, the DEA, and on, the VA, that's not why they exist. They don't exist to protect and to rise up the politicians in this country. So those political appointees need to go away. The politicians in this country need to be limited. If I had it my way, the president, the president needs to be an executive leader. And I think, most presidents don't even go into office until they're older anyway. So 8 years is I might even change it to where it's 5 and 5 for a president. So they're there for 10 years. If here's my caveat to all this. Senators, I think, should be able to, 10, 12 years at the most. And then their time is done. Congressmen, I think 2 terms. 2 terms. 3 at the most, but 2 terms. But here's the thing that really needs to change. These people need to be fired. We need to have the American citizenry. I'm not talking about, what do they call that? The Constitutional Convention. I'm not talking about something like that. You know who's going to run that? The 2 political parties. What I'm talking about is civilians being able to go up, and if enough of us say, fire that person. We have to have legitimate complaints and legitimate proof, just like in a court of law, that that person is committing malpractice of their job and they should be fired. We should have a way to fire politicians, and they should have limits on how long they can serve. There should be no career politicians. There should be no pensions. Why should you get a pension? There shouldn't be anybody up there for a lifetime. You should get health insurance while you're there. And the job should be simplified. You know, I learned a lot from living in a doorman building here in New York City for 13 years. Doorman buildings typically are ran, and I'm not going to criticize everybody to put them in this loop, but when it comes to the buildings that I live in, so it's a Brodsky building, and I'm not going to try to hide anything from this. This management group, they do not have a plan for their people, right? They don't sit their people down and say, okay, here's your job. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and you do this, and you're a success at your job. If you only do this many, you're not a success. You have to do this, and you're a success. And here's what your job description is. It's to do this, 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 and this, and here's your schedule. You know, you're going to clean the mirrors on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You wax the floor on Mondays. You do this, 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 and this. There's your job description, and this is how you succeed at your job. They don't do that, right? So there's no clear definition. So from a tenant's perspective, it's a complete failure. Things don't get taken care of. There's things that are done for no rhyme or reason. The floor, one guy may mop it well, the other guy may not mop it at all. So some days it looks terrible, other days it looks okay. The mirrors, maybe they'll get cleaned, maybe they won't. There's no job definition. You have supervisor for maintenance that is in charge who lives in the building, and he's the last one to ever respond, if anybody even responds at night, when there's a major pipe burst or something like that, or a party that's going on in the building that's out of control, which they had one time, like 100 people, some underage teenagers having sex in the stairwell. All these things are going on, and it was just some tenants that were down there trying to get these people out. Supervisor is nowhere to be found. So why do I bring this up? Not just because I want to criticize the way this building's managed, because it's managed terribly. Trust me on that one. It's because Washington, D.C. is very similar. Congressmen, we don't give them, senators and presidents, we don't give them the job descriptions. You see, that's the problem. When we hire these people and we send them to Washington, D.C., we should say, if you want to be reelected or if you don't want to be fired, and we should have the ability to fire them, I believe, then it's the only thing I've ever seen in this country where you can't fire somebody is a politician and judge, those types of people. But we say that the politician, if you want to be reelected and you don't want to be fired, you got to do this, 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 and this. If you do these and not these, you're going to get fired, right? And here's your job description. You're to go to Washington, D.C., and you are to balance a budget. You are to make sure that a budget is passed every year. You're to make sure that the military is funded and that those soldiers are taken care of and given the tools that they need. You're to make sure that our national security is taken care of. You're to make sure that our roads and infrastructure are taken care of. You're to make sure that an outside ideology that goes against the Constitution of the United States does not get in and is made illegal. That is your job. I mean, there'd be a long list. But this is, we don't give them a job description. You see, their job description is vague in the Constitution. It really it lays out the terms of their service more than, an overview of what Congress does, the Senate does, the president will do, the executive branch and judicial branch will do. But there's no real job description in there. And so for years and years, these two political parties have drawn up their own job descriptions. And it's all over the place. And it has nothing to do with what's best for this country. And so we, the American people, need to send our politicians, and I hate the word politician. We should scrap that word. If anybody considers themselves a politician, they should be fired from their job. And we should take leaders and managers, and we should say, okay, you're a representative from this state. You're a senator from this state. You are not a politician. If you play politics, you will be fired. See, we don't define their jobs, so they define them for us. And they tell us we're politicians. This is a political election. Stop with that nonsense. We need to start defining their jobs and saying that you're a representative of the people. You're a senator, which is representative of the state. Used to be anyway. And you're the president. You're the executive leader of this country. And you're the judges, which means you are neutral in your decisions, and you stick by the Constitution, and you don't waver to the left or to the right of it. You stick with it. Now, if that was the case, and we gave them their job descriptions, and we got rid of the Republican and Democratic parties, and we said no more. You don't define your job anymore. We define it. If we did that and the American people stood together, we could fix this stuff. But the problem is you're not going to do it. This country is gotten too far away from understanding what they fled from, what the Founding Fathers fled from, that they think it's always going to be okay. Politicians are politicians, but we'll always have a defense. We'll always have a budget. You pay your taxes. Everything will be okay. You don't even realize the life that you could have. Look, do we get $1,000 or $2,000 back this year compared to last year? Yeah. Is that going to help some people out? Sure. Are things going to be a little bit different in taxes? So I think Trump's plan is better than what we had. But here's the reality. Billions and billions and billions of dollars are wasted of our money. You want to have free health care. You want to have free education. Stop giving other countries our tax dollars. Where is it in our Constitution that says we have to give other countries our money? We have the strongest military on this planet. Nobody's going to F with us, okay? So why do we feel the need to go out and give everybody money? You really want to do something? Offer every country expert farmers to go and teach them how to farm. If they have a mosquito problem, offer them scientists to help them get rid of their mosquito problem. If they have water problem, offer them scientists to help them develop ways to get water. If they don't have enough planes and they feel like their neighbor is a threat to them, have them build a base and we'll come and occupy it. And ain't nobody going to mess with us. But why on earth are we giving them money and we're building bases on their land, which they make money from, so that we can go over and protect them? That makes no sense to me. You want to have free health care and you want to have free education in this country. Is it doable? Well, I'll tell you what, it might be doable if you stop giving all of our money away. And if you lowered the taxes enough to where huge corporations like Apple would come here or all these other companies so they could compete, so we could compete with China. China is just a huge advanced third world country that has basically slave labor. And so, yeah, they have billions of people that will work for nothing. You want free education, free health care? Real free? It's not free. We'll pay for it. Don't tax people more. Get our money and bring them back. What do we got, a troll over here? Somebody tell me what's going on here on Twitter. Somebody tell me, Remo, tell me who the troll is and I'll block him. Let's see here. Hold on. Gabriel. Somebody, let's see here. Hold on one second, folks. Hold on. I don't want to get too far off the subject with this, but if this troll must be bothering a lot of people. Take a break. I'll let my throat relax for a second. Again, if you haven't shared this show, make sure that you share it. Hold on. All right, let's see here. Gabriel, you're going down. All right, let me go over here to Periscope. I'll let Gabriel say one more thing before I kick you off here. Let's see here. Make sure it's the right person. Sometimes blocking people's fun. Let's see here. Sometimes they don't come up on... Yeah, I'll just block them this way. Hold on. Doo-doo-doo-doo. There he is. There you go. I got him, I think. Okay. Oh, there he is. We got him. We got him. Okay, so let's get back on track here. Now that we got rid of that weirdo. Not that all people that have a bald spot are weird. I got a little one up there. Okay. Let's just sum this up. I've been on for a lot longer than I planned on being on. We didn't get to talk about the number 3 person the DOJ quits. They say she's going to she got a huge offer. Couldn't resist it. We need to be taking note of who's quitting, because just like deputy director, these people could be running scared. They see what's coming down the pipe. Gagliano the stalker. Is Gags up? Is he on here? So here's the deal, folks. You know what's interesting about this is tonight, I started off low numbers. Of course, we're not going to get the numbers that we I already had Tamiflu, Steve. I'm done with the flu now. I just have the remnants of that cough in my chest, because it gets in your chest. You can't get rid of it. You can't get it out of it. It doesn't break up. Mine's actually starting to break up now. I'm healthy. I'm not contagious anymore. So what I like, though, is the amount of people that have been watching this show have been watching it for the entire time we've been talking. In fact, the numbers have gone up quite a bit. And I'm here to tell you, folks, that this is the attention that the American people need to start paying to what's going on. I'm not the best orator in the world. I mean, I say words wrong. I forget words all the time. But in my mind, I'm like an idiot savant, all right? And there's a lot more idiot than there is savant here. I've never claimed to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, I look at myself. I'm not saying I'm as smart as Socrates, but Socrates always said, I know that I do not know, and that's basically why he wins the arguments, because he doesn't put himself into a corner. I've always tried to maintain, as Ron Bell and I were discussing today, for the longest time in the military, we were trained on basically a horizontal level, right? This is the battlefield. And this is the way you train. You do, your maneuvers, you do all these things. It's always on a horizontal plane. And what Ron discovered when he went into Afghanistan and Iraq, but primarily Afghanistan, was that it's not just horizontal. It's not just 360 degrees this way. It's also 360 degrees this way. It's this way. It's this way. And you have this whole, really, it's like a bubble that you can turn in any direction, and there's assets that you can use. There's enemies that are coming from there. And so your fight in a war it's not just here. It's here, it's there, it's over there, it's up and down. And that is an entire different perception for a warfighter that has never been in battle before and who is trained for years by people and with people that have never been in battle. And out of all the things that we talk about, because Ron put me through land warfare training in the SEAL teams. So everything I learned from Ron. But I learned from Ron before he went into battle. And so I learned this. But what's interesting is I learned this from being in the FBI and from being in the Air Marshals. I learned that, when you're doing an operation like surveillance, it's not just here. You have air assets overhead. I learned when you go in, you're going into a house because you're going to do a mass arrest, and maybe we have a house up in the Bronx somewhere, and we're going in. You don't just concentrate on the door. You have to realize that they throw buckets with cement or toilets down onto cops and kill them from the roofs. So you have to understand that not only is the threat here and maybe there, but you may have a helo up here that's watching, or a sniper that's somewhere on the other building that you can communicate with. So the battle plan takes on more than just a horizontal. It takes on a vertical perception. And this is the way my mind has always worked. And that's why it worked out very well for me when I went from horizontal thinking into this world that Ron was talking about. I never thought about it that way until I talked to Ron, but that's the way my mind works. And so when I see what's going on in this country, I'm not the brightest cookie on the block, but I do know that when I see things, I'm looking at it from what's happening in Washington, D.C., from this perspective. And so I see, for instance, that whereas everybody else on television and radio is concentrating on, here's the FBI. I watched Geraldo today. I was very impressed with Geraldo. Geraldo drew a little thing on a piece of paper where it had HRC, Hillary Rodham Clinton, representing the Clintons, and a line down to Steele, who was the informant, and a line down to the dossier, and then a line down to the FISA court. And, look, you got to give credit to Geraldo because he gets it now that these are the players that are in this and how the manipulation could have come from Hillary Clinton, the dossier. They could have been feeding that information to Steele, the informant. But he said, but the FBI is probably out here in left field. Well, I don't believe the FBI is out in left field. I believe that he's got part of the picture, but you can't look at this and say that's the truth. You have to say, okay, that's part of the spider web. But the spider web may be out here. It may be down there. It may be that Director Comey and Mueller and Deputy Director McCabe and Strzok and his lover Page and all these other individuals from the DOJ and the FBI were in on this. And also, maybe they're utilizing people who have access that are actually support staff, or maybe some lower agents that have access to people who are masked, but they are actually people who sit and listen to these FISAs. Maybe they're in their pocket so that they can, they can just say, yes, this meeting happened. We need to get this unmasked. They unmask it. You see, you have to start looking at what's going on in Washington, D.C. the way I look at the world, which is like this. I look at it all over. That's why I'm rarely surprised and people rarely get one over on me, because I see all these things and I take into account 360 degrees all the way around me. And the American people need to start realizing What you're seeing in Washington, D.C. isn't just this group. It's not just that group. It's not just the Clintons. It's not just the Democrats. You need to start looking all around so you can see the reality of this massive spider web that isn't so massive, really, to tell you the truth, but it is on something greater than a horizontal plane. It's not static. These are people that exist in different levels of the government. It's people that exist in different agencies. It's people that exist in different parties, and people that have different motivations. But yet they're all playing the same game, and you're sitting right here, and most of us are just looking here. And we say, oh, yeah, that FBI is bad. Or we say, oh, yeah, those Clintons are bad. When the reality is, this is going on, yes. And somebody just said on Twitter, it's worldwide. It's not just here. I've said that a million times. A couple shows ago after SHOT Show, I told you. I met Australians. I met Canadians. I met people from Great Britain, and they all said the same thing. It's all happening. It's all happening. And this is why the American people need to see the true picture of what's going on. And you need to start thinking to yourself and with others out loud, saying, how long do we wait? How far do we allow this to continue to go now that we see it? Because here's the problem that you have to ask yourself. It's like raising a kid, right? Or raising a dog. I don't know if kids had dogs. If my dog presents a bad habit, I correct him. And then the next time I correct him, now that I know what that bad habit is, I try to get them before they do that thing. And when I see their ears, like Rico is always feisty, always wanting to get in a fight. And so once I realized where he's going to do it, I see the situation about to happen, and there's a twinge that'll happen in his ear or his tail will move. Boom, that's when I correct it, way before the action occurs. And that's how you fix these problems. You have to think of them way before. You have to see what's occurring and then back way up so then you can correct it here. And so the question I have for you all, where are we in that process? Because here's what happens, and I'll tell you, raise a Jack Russell, you'll understand this. If you don't start correcting now, long before you get there, or if you don't even pay attention to it, and you just walk your dog and, oh, he's just a feisty Jack Russell, you know what's going to eventually happen? You must know I'm talking about it because he just raised up and looked at me. That dog is either going to get killed because he's going to get away from you, or he's going to get in a fight and you're going to end up getting bit. And then, which has happened to me. Even though I corrected him, he still got in a fight with a much bigger dog, and I got bit because I had to get in there and get him out of there. So the same thing with what's going on. You see it. You already see it. You can sit back and do nothing. If you do nothing, your freedom will eventually, as history shows us, your eventually will disappear. It will be taken from you. History, there is not one example in history where a country started going down this road and the country survived. It's always gone down the road where your freedom is stolen. So let's say you realize this and the American people start to realize this. How do you correct it? Well, you know, the same thing with correcting a dog. I can't just randomly slap him. I can't just pull him this way and run that way. There has to be uniformity in the way, and I have to think my way through this and have to plan it. I have to realize what's happening. And so the American people have to, now that you see what's going on in Washington, D.C., and you see the reality of what's going on in the globe, and you know it needs a correction, which Thomas Jefferson talked about over 240 years ago. I pose the question to you. At what point do you start correcting now? Are you going to correct, or are you going to allow this to continue? Are you going to stand together and unify, or are you going to try to do it yourself? Because you'll fail, and you'll probably go to jail for a long time. As I've said over and over and over, and I'll put this meme up. Look, I know some people hate these memes, but it's the only way I get people to look at and recognize stuff, so forgive me for it. It's not because I have an ego. Stand by here. It'll come up in a second. Oh, I know why it's not going. Nope. There it goes. So I put this up the other day. A lot of you probably saw it. I'm going to put it on here just so you can see it. See how big it is on here. Daggum, that's big. All right, let me fix that. Boom. There you go. Okay. Much better. I'm over here. There you go. As I've said on this show 1,000 times, dialogue leads to unity. Yeah, that's what I look like when I'm cleaned up a little bit. Unity leads to strength. And truth will be the sword that strikes down our nation's domestic enemies. There's probably another part to this, right? Dialogue leads to unity. We're doing it. We're talking. American people are talking about this all the time. They still try to spin it to the left or to the right. It doesn't have to be spun. It just is. We need to stop with this spinning stuff to the left or the right. That's why we're being fooled and we're being owned. Continue to have the dialogue and unify. If you're left, if you're liberal, if you're a woman, if you're a minority, don't be stupid. Come on, look at Washington, D.C. You see what's going on. Forget about this. You're oppressed. You got to put on a vagina hat. Forget about that's nonsense. That stuff is not going to fix anything. And quite frankly, you're not oppressed, okay? You can be the greatest you want to be. I know a woman who's an astronaut. I know a woman who's a fighter pilot. I know a black man that was a SEAL. I know, you name it, I've seen them. You can be whatever you want in this world now, in this country anyway. Stop buying into that nonsense. It's not true. Start having dialogue together, not at each other, not that you're wrong and I'm wrong or I'm wrong and you're whatever. They are criminal. They are playing a game with us. That's the dialogue you all need to start having. If you don't see that, you need to take your head out of your rear because it's there. Once you do that, you're going to start to have strength. And once you have strength, the whole thing that is going to allow you to push forward, to do it honorably, to stand in recognition of doing the right thing is truth. You cannot build a revolution off of a lie. It'll fail. You cannot. That's why these people are saying that they're the revolution or that they're the what's the word I'm looking for here? They're constantly using it. The resistance, right? You're the resistance and you're based on a lie. That's never going to work. It's better if you stand with each other, forget about color and gender and all these reasons why they try to separate you. As you can see, people like Linda Sarsour is a liar. We all know that. She's a jihadist. We all know that. Now she's turning on men in the Democratic Party because she doesn't want to hear from white men anymore. Of course, that's not racist as far as she's concerned. She's a racist. Her little loudmouth friend, Tamika Mallory, is also a racist. And all those folks that they hang with, they're all racist, communists, leftists. Forget about those people. If you're a woman, be powerful. If you got dark skin or light skin, it doesn't matter. That doesn't determine your power at all. And if you're fixated on it, what it does is it defines how stupid you are. You need to start having dialogue together so that you can unify against a common enemy. That's the greatest way to unify. Once you have that, you will be unified in truth. And that truth is a sword that you can lob at the enemy that will push people forward into doing things that they would never have woken up to do. You think people who stood on a burning building on 9/11, 2001, that those people woke up that morning thinking that the truth that they would face would be that they either have to burn to death or jump? They did not think that would be the truth. And you know what a lot of those people did? They jumped together. I talked to several agents that were there that day. They said they saw people jumping together in multitudes, jumping to their deaths together. They made the decision based on truth. That's what they were going to have to do. Truth does not mean easy street, that's for sure. But those people in that moment, were faced with something that it wasn't a life or death situation. It was a death situation. It was just very stark and apparent to them. They were going to burn or they were going to jump. And they chose to end it their way. And they did it together in some circumstances, and some they didn't. But you know what's happening in America right now? You know what's happening? You're facing a death or death situation. It's just that it's like being boiled alive. If it starts out warm and you don't realize it, and they slowly turn the heat up. It's like being drawn into a cult where people present themselves as your friends, and then they get you in there and they manipulate your feelings, and they make you do things to make you feel ashamed, and then they crush your spirit, and then they own you when they separate you from your families. It's like being led down an ideology when in a country where you're free to be the best that you can be, but people constantly used to tell you if you have dark skin, you know, you're less than a man, right? Than a white man. You're less than a average human being, right? We fought against that. They broke out of that. We got to a point where everybody was equal, and then this turn where you can't even turn CNN on anymore without hearing the word black man 10,000 times by people who have dark skin. They now identify with the color of their skin, and they want you to identify them by the color of skin. It makes no sense whatsoever. But what's happened is they are being led down not a life or death situation, a death or death situation. They're being led down a path that is a lie. There is no difference between the man that has light skin and the man that has dark skin. The only difference between the two men is the content of their character, whether or not they have ethics, morals, and understand and know God, or if they're even attempting to know him. That's what separates a man or a woman. I'm talking about mankind here. Don't get yourself all uppity. Don't get injured or your feelings hurt. This is a death or death situation that we're in. We're not in a life or death situation. This is a death or death situation unless we correct. If we correct, we can take it back. It'd be the same as if all of a sudden, you know, some kind of magical firefighting helicopter flew over and told the people, you now have the choice. You can burn to death, you can jump together, or we'll throw these hoses down there, and it's enough to put the fire out, but you're going to have to work hard and you're going to have to work together. I can guarantee you what those people would have done on 9/11. You would have seen people fighting a fire like no firefighter has ever fought a fire. A lot of them would have come out injured. Some of them would have been dead. But ultimately, that fire would have been put out, and in a magical world here, I'm saying. And there would have been people that would have gone home to their families, and it would not have been as successful of an attack as it was. Right now, you are in a death or death situation. And until the American people start having dialogue, start unifying, They will not have strength. And even if they have the truth, they will not be able to use it. It'll be the same as if those people on 9/11 each had a fire extinguisher. It would have done nothing. You need the strength of water. You need the strength of a lot of water that only, a fire battalion or somebody can bring in. That's what you need now. You don't just need truth. Truth alone isn't going to do it. You can have 1,000,000 swords, but if you have 1,000,000 people that don't know how to use them, you're going to lose the fight. If you have 10,000 people that know how to use them really, really well, you may actually win the fight. If you have 1,000,000 people that are trained even moderately good to use those swords, you are definitely going to win that fight, most likely. So it's better to have a million people that are pretty good with that sword and 10,000 that are awesome. That way you have your special forces groups. Now we're getting into tactics. But remember, I'm warning you today, February 9th. Remember this, February 9th, 2018, 10:48 p.m. I warned you. We are in a death situation. Except you do have a lifeline. And that lifeline is called unity. You already have the tools. You already have the truth. The truth is in every single one of you. But the only way to fight the fire is if you unify and you use those tools together. Period. Let's go to the truth zone. And we'll do the Friday night toast. So if you haven't gotten something to drink, do it. I have kombucha is what I'm going to be toasting with tonight out of my red Solo cup. There you go. It is a fermented drink. There's no alcohol in it. And it's an acquired taste. But it's good for you. Let's go to the truth zone. Here's one other thing I need from everybody before we raise a toast. I need to know from people, okay? I don't know if you noticed, but last night I think it was, I wasn't in the best of moods. It's one of those nights where I question why I do this show over and over again. I got to thank a lot of people from the CQRF. They donated money last night to the GoFundMe page, and that was tremendous. But more than the money, it was the fact that I got lots of messages, and those people that donated the money, you showed me that this show means something to you. Here's what I gotta know though. This show, Newsmax had it on a couple times, not their cup of tea, whatever. I'm put on a do not book list on Fox News because I tell the truth. CNN, they couldn't wait to get away from me. Radio is, I do pretty good on radio because I got a lot of time to say exactly what the truth is. But my question is to you, along with, at what point do we stand against this government? The question I have for you is, what does this show mean to you? I've been doing this show for over 2 years now, and I'm not really clear as to what it means to people, because it's me, Scott Eulinger, I bring him on, Ron Bellum, I have Kitty Kelly, I have David Robinson on here, I've had other people on here, Ted Nugent was on here. But I'm trying to figure out where the place is for this show. What do you get out of it that you don't get out of other... be honest with me. What do you get out of this show that you don't get from other analysts? Yeah, I know I could start at 8 o'clock every night. It's my biggest problem is that everything gets wound up around 8 o'clock. But I need to know, do you see what I feel when I do this show every night? Because I don't feel like I'm doing this show for me. Trust me on that. This show is hard. It's a hassle to do this every night. I don't know if you notice, I don't go anywhere because I'm here every night. And that's okay. But I got to know from you all, what do you get out of it? What does it mean to you? Let me know, because I need to know that. I'm being drawn to do this show, pushed to do this show, called to do it, but I really honestly don't know what it means to you all. So let's raise a toast, whether you got kombucha or something else. Here's to truth. Here's to the one who created truth, the Father of truth, to God in heaven. Here's to his son, Jesus, which is my Lord and Savior. Hey, listen, Jesus was a Jew. Get on board. And here's to not feeling stupid when you're doing something that other people are too afraid to do. If you're called to do it, do it. If you know you're able to do it, do it. And if you got other people that'll stand with you, do it. Here's to you all. Here's to the CQRF. Here's to America. I'm Jonathan Gillum. My old buddy Rico, he's asleep over there. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.